Today, sex and religion meets a pastor with a very unique challenge.
You'll never hear a minister up on stage talking about have sex.
And then travels to Egypt to visit a television star, all in praise of sex. I'm Lori Brown. In a world overflowing with different and sometimes conflicting attitudes about sex and religion, how do we navigate this provocative landscape? Where does sex fit into our pursuit of spiritual enlightenment? Or does it at all? Is it an integral part of who we are, or is it a blind biological drive that leads us away from the divine? In this series, we look at stories of people trying to answer that question. We'll seek out sex therapists and imams, polygamists and Catholic bishops. We'll speak to experts both inside and outside the fold, rabbis, priests, sex workers, philosophers, and gurus, all of whom shed some much-needed light on the relationship between sex and religion. This story is about Paul and Susie Worth. It's a classic love story, or at least it starts out that way.
This is my sweetie right here.
This is Paul.
This is me.
He's handsomest man in the world.
Boy meets girl, girl meets boy. They fall in love, they get married, they have a family. And then life happens.
Hi, Paul. I love you.
When I first met Paul, I was a little attracted to him because he was giving me a little bit of attention.
She had really long hair then, like really long, kind of 80s permed hair. It was hot.
I love you, Paul.
We were in this private college where you weren't allowed to kiss. Like, you weren't even allowed to hold hands. But I didn't care because I was going to kiss her anyway.
Felt like we wanted to spend the rest of our lives together, but there was one glitch in my heart. I felt God really calling me into some kind of full-time ministry. And Paul was set on the path of drama.
It was that semester that I felt God shifting my thinking to, I don't want to be in theater forever. I want to do ministry.
It was like God had us planned to be together, and he worked it all out at the right time. So we got engaged.
I remember on our honeymoon night, I was nervous. I had never had intercourse. I wouldn't come out of the bathroom. I was in the bathroom and I wouldn't come out. And I will never forget Susie saying, "The Bible says be naked and unashamed. Come on out, let's go."
So far, this sounds like a fairy tale marriage. Paul became a minister. They bought a house, things were going really well. But everybody knows that fairy tales are just that, fairy tales. And life throws us curveballs we're not always able to handle. When Paul and Susie's daughter Ashlyn was born, they knew something wasn't right. Paul found it difficult to cope.
I don't remember the neurologist saying that she's mildly mentally retarded, but Paul did.
You're never prepared for that. And I think when all hell breaks loose, you look to escape. I could see the storm coming. I could see the flirtation that I was engaging in that was inappropriate.
His heart was definitely not turned toward me, and I knew something was wrong, didn't know what it was, never dreamed that it was someone else.
I said, I blew it. I cheated on you. I was an arrogant, cocky pastor who thought he could do anything. And God said, nice try.
Paul confessed his infidelity in front of his congregation, then he resigned. What do you do when you want to start over? For Paul and Susie, it meant going home.
We moved in with my mom and dad.
He came down here and lived with us to save money.
6 months?
6 months.
It's the 2-bedroom, 1-bath house that I grew up in, so there's not a whole lot of room there.
In fact, we bought that couch for them. That couch is one of them. What do you call that couch?
Futons.
A futon. It makes into a
This was where they
bed?
slept.
The Lord spoke to my heart and said, if I can forgive Paul, if I can forgive his hands, his feet, every part of him, if I can forgive him, then how can you not forgive him?
I preach about the love of Jesus and the forgiveness of Jesus and how that Jesus can forgive anything. But Susie embodied that for me. And she is the greatest woman that I know.
So begins the next chapter in their life, and this is where sex comes back in, but not how you might expect. Paul and Susie Worth were putting their life back together. Their first step was to start a church, Relevant Church.
We said we want to be culturally relevant to the community. We want to be as fresh and current as today's newspaper.
We're a place where culture meets Christ. And that's what Relevant is all about. So I'm so glad that you guys are here. Some of you are watching online, and I want to say thank you guys for watching online.
To fit in with Relevant Church's mandate, Paul and Susie took one of the biggest obstacles from their own life together and turned it into a challenge for others, a 30-day sex challenge. It sounds pretty self-explanatory, but here it is anyway. Paul and Susie simply challenged their married congregants to have sex every day for 30 days.
Whenever I first told my wife about it, she was kind of like, okay, what's the point?
Our spouses laughed a little bit and reluctantly entered into this agreement with us.
I wasn't for it. I'm an older person like me, maybe a younger person, hey, that's cool, I don't like it.
He just thought, oh man, what are you thinking, son?
There were people that were taken back by it. I don't know if we lost anybody in the church over it.
It was a holistic approach that kind of drew the husbands in because we said sex and challenge. So,
And they knew they were going to get nookie for 30 days. But there's a hook to it.
Yeah.
Because for 30 days, for that spouse, for that wife, we're going to help that husband start learning how to communicate.
Sound familiar? Paul and Susie were still working on their marriage. They were just inviting others to do it with them.
It's really how to build your relationship the right way. And for far too long, the media has only focused on the sexual part of it. And the church has only focused on the spiritual part of it. And everybody left out the emotional part of it.
The reactions were mixed.
It just seemed like everybody was titillated by this idea of this challenge. And, and then, of course, all the crazy church nuts came out.
we had some hate mail.
Different media groups would put out a snippet of information. Pastor in Florida issues 30-day sex challenge. Ding, 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 ding. One headline said, the gospel according to St. Nookie. The biggest criticism we got, one was, God doesn't care about sex. Well, to those pastors, I would say, read your Bible.
You'll never hear a minister up on stage talking about have sex. You'll hear abstinence before marriage. They don't talk about it after marriage. At that point, it's kind of a hush-hush. So to have a minister, somebody who was a God-fearing, Bible-believing, Bible-teaching guy in front of, the world saying, have sex for 30 days, was a culture shock for Americans.
In religious circles, we think that, well, God just created that for procreation. God created sex for pleasure, too. He did. Why? I think because he loves us.
So what's it like having sex every day for 30 days? Most of us probably can't answer that question. And did it improve people's marriages?
I'm going to tell you that.
Why wouldn't you be happy?
That's some dynamite fireworks.
And it was a great 30 days of our relationship for sure, and definitely is still paying dividends.
It does
Yes.
truthfully bring you closer
Yeah.
as a couple, and it doesn't matter how old you are.
The sexual part of it was the end result, but you had the couples were supposed to be relating to each other on all these other levels. If they didn't relate to each other on all these other levels, then the end result wasn't going to occur.
Paul and Susie are stars now. Not big ones, but they've written a best-selling book, and churches all across North America are copying them. There's sex classes, 100-day sex challenges, and even talk of a follow-up, this time for couples who are getting married. But if all this started as a way to repair their own relationship, where does it all leave them?
I can't think of doing life without Susie and my kids. Our marriage is greater today than it ever has been.
How's your sex life these days?
Good last night.
You did not say that. Paul, you scratched that for the record.
When we come back,
What are
a
you
woman
doing?
who's calling for a revolution. Changing attitudes towards sexuality isn't just a Christian phenomenon. In the Arab world, it's largely forbidden for a woman, particularly an observant Muslim woman, to talk openly and publicly about sex. But in Egypt, one such woman is leading a revolution of her own. She's changing the way people think and, of course, stirring up controversy at the same time. To many, whether they are right or not, Islam has a reputation for being close-minded, conservative, old-fashioned. It's a religion that some believe takes a regressive view of sexuality and marriage. Here in the city of Cairo, though, one woman disagrees with these stereotypes. She's out to change them. Meet Heba Khatib, one of Egypt's biggest stars, a devout Muslim and Islam's first sexologist.
I love books, so I was reading, and I was amazed that there was an existing science called sexuality. And I started chatting with my girlfriends about their sexual lives, and oh my God, they don't know anything. They know nothing about the whole issue.
When Heba Khatib was 14 years old, she dreamed of being a surgeon. But life doesn't always work out the way we think it's going to. Heba went to school and she became a doctor. But she also fell in love. And one day, after the birth of her first child, she had to make a choice.
I didn't imagine what is the mother like before being an actual mother, before Dina. So I had to choose, which was the hardest choice of my life, between my daughter and being with my daughter, and to continue on with my dream of being a surgeon one day. And actually, Dina won. They want money, of course, like all kids. لا يا روحي. انتم متغديين كفاية قوي كده. To give up my life dream, it was a hard moment. But well, I believe I made the right choice. I chose my motherhood.
We can't know how the choices we make will help determine our lives. Today, Heba Khatib is a television star, a big one. She has had 3 TV shows, and all of them have dealt with the same topic, sex. You see, Heba is not only the first, she's possibly the only sexologist in the Arab world. She's certainly the first to talk about a healthy sex life in front of the camera, and of course, she's a woman. These facts make her pretty unique and highly sought after on the talk show circuit.
What is that Heba you're writing?
Some notes, because they just told me about the subject of the quote of this episode for tonight. There is something called wedding night impotence. I mean,
Oh, I see.
yeah, every man is, you know, he could have impotence on the wedding night despite his extremely normal.
Sex on television is nothing new in the West. It's practically a requirement to get airtime. But in Egypt and much of the Middle East, it's almost unheard of, and Heba's approach to the topic is different from her American, Canadian, or European counterparts.
I don't treat unmarried people because I have to make the sex stick inside the marriage. This is what Allah permits, and I couldn't get away from the boundaries Allah put to me. Islam explains the science. Islam is not at all conservative. towards sexuality between husband and wife.
All of her advice comes from the Quran, and as fate would have it, as Heba was becoming an expert in sexology, she also found herself more and more drawn to Islam. She couldn't help but make connections never made before.
I realized that the matter of the foreplay is written there. The matter of the frequency of intercourse is written there. Even the sexual positions and how to avoid the boredom, the sexual boredom, it's written there. So I just made the links, between the science and the religion. I don't agree with the point of view of the West towards the sexuality because, open sex is against science. Let's get away even from the religion. There is something scientific called the sexual templates. The sexual templates means what do I like as a person in sex from my partner and vice versa. So if you have several partners before marriage, so this would leave a print in your personality, in your default, in your way of having sex or the way you like to have sex in. How about the abstinence before marriage? This would solve all the problems of, the mismatching of the sex between spouses.
Heba wasn't always so religious. She was brought up in a secular family. When she met and married her husband Hashem, they decided to raise a more observant family than they were raised in. She put on a veil for the first time 2 months after her marriage. She's worn it ever since.
If I were not wearing the veil as a sexologist and was speaking that way about sex and sexuality, I don't think I would have any critics because I would people would say that okay, she's not religious, she's not conservative, she's free to say whatever she wants to say.
Heba's private practice has become hugely successful. Where there were only a handful of clients in a week to start, there are now 20 appointments a day, booked months in advance, and of course, the huge success of her TV show only adds to this popularity.
It became a very famous TV show, and it was receiving like 70,000 SMSs within this hour. So it was a record in the Arab TVs. So I'm very proud of that. And
not everyone agrees with her outspokenness. Sheikh Yosef al-Badri is a noted conservative Islamic cleric and is a vehement opponent to open sexual discussion.
من الذي علم الحمار؟ من الذي علم البغلة؟ من الذي علم المهرة؟ من الذي علم القردة الجنس؟ هناك من علمهم الجنس؟ هذه أمور طبيعية الله خلقها في الإنسان.
هل المرة الأخيرة من حق امرأة تطلع على التلفزيون وتتكلم عن الجنس للرجال والنساء على التلفزيون؟
لا يجوز.
ليه؟
لا يجوز.
ليه؟
لأنها لو كانت امرأة تصلح لهذا لأرسل الله نبيه. هل سمعت أن هناك نبيه أو رسوله؟ الله أعلم. من الذي يصلح للتعليم والإعلام؟ رجالا نوحي إليهم.
Heba Khatib has never been intimidated by controversy, and despite her critics, Heba feels change is needed and the time is now.
I think the word, especially my country and my society, it needs a revolution, really. Sexual dysfunctions are rising all over the world. I claim that if ever somebody is exposed to negative conditions rendering his sexual life not good enough, well, it's affecting every single space in his life and the way he's dealing with other people.
Heba Khatib has traveled extensively, educating colleagues and groups on her interpretation of Islam and sex. There's only so big one can get in a small country like Egypt, but Heba's not looking to bring her message to just Arab countries. She's looking to conquer the world. However, as controversial as she's become in the East, Heba is equally as certain to become controversial in the West, but for very different reasons.
You have a connection to Canada. You're in the process of becoming a Canadian citizen.
I hope so.
You've got all the success going on in Egypt and in the Middle East. What's attracting you about coming to Canada, about bringing all that to Canada?
The sexual problems are the same just everywhere in the world. The different things are just the details.
Are you concerned, though, that, because I know that you've taken some criticism on some of the attitudes towards homosexuality, for example, and some of your views on that have been called regressive, in fact. How do you think that's going to play in Canada here?
The opinion I say about homosexuality is just a scientific one, and it's a proved one. I mean, it's the, let's say, the secretion of a lot of researchers. The thing I say by my eyes and the program I invented to cure these homosexuals, and which proves actually that it's something which is like a deviation, it's a bad habit. And if anybody wants to be a straight man again, he could do that, actually.
So is the world ready for Heba? That remains to be seen. For now, she has a private practice, she's busier than ever, she's working on her latest TV show, and if Heba has her way, we'll soon find out.
I think this is my destiny. Sometimes I thought, I believed that, oh my God, I'm tired. That's it. Well, tomorrow, starting from tomorrow, I'm not a fighter. I would accept anything just coming in, thanks God, and that's it. Well, the day after, well, everything just get to its original way, and I'm a fighter again.
Whether it's for procreation or recreation, sex is part of being human, perhaps one of the best parts. But somehow that doesn't make it any easier to talk about. For many people, sex is something secretive and often embarrassing or even shameful. People like Heba and Paul and Susie Worth are trying to change that. And it doesn't seem to matter what religion you subscribe to. For them, a healthy sex life equals a healthy spiritual life.
Hello, how are you?
She is my best friend. I'll marry her back in a heartbeat.
I would marry him too.
When we learned how to fish. She didn't know how to even put a worm on a hook.
Oh, but I can outfish you now.
And now, you think that is true?
It's the truth.
It is unbelievable. This girl can fish.
I am the best.
I shouldn't have never taught her how to fish. And when I get ready to go fishing, if I don't go with her, I won't feel right.
Yeah.
My wife,
You really
well, she's
do.
still my best friend.